That was beautiful. Set the tone just right. The love of God. I saw something the other day by G.K. Chesterton, where he says, let your religion be less of a theory and more of a love affair. Isn't that great? I mean, it's that wonderful realization that instead of trying to bring things, to process stuff in your head and your brain, to just know that this idea of spirit or spirituality is a love affair. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, our love affair with God. And not necessarily with something that we think exists outside of us, but the love of God that we express from within ourselves, that our expression is the love of God. Charlotte Beck said, every moment of our life is relationship. There is nothing except relationship. So, isn't that an interesting thought? Everything that we experience in life is relationship, and every experience we have with ourselves, with another individual, regardless of whether or not they're close to us, or family, friends, every person is in relationship with us. Every person that we may not even know exists on the planet is in relationship with us. Far-reaching thoughts. Let your mind kind of expand a little bit. Because we think that that relationship is between two people that we're familiar with, but we are in relationship with everything around us all the time. And sometimes we call that God is present everywhere. Having a little static, so it's my little dryer sheet that I use in the morning sometimes to make that go away. Okay, so the purpose of today's talk is to allow that shift to happen within us. That shift from thinking that there's this being out there that loves us to the realization that God, or the power, the presence, the expression of love comes from within us. And we're pretty much aware of that concept. And I'm going to take it a little bit further this morning. I'm going to deepen that a little bit. How many of you saw What the Bleep? That's great. If you haven't seen What the Bleep, you should rent it. It's in most of the video stores now. It's a wonderful consciousness type of movie, and it's also very, very supportive of our teaching. And in that, Dr. Hemmerhoff says, consciousness is far more than the brain acting like a computer. Sometimes that's what we think it is. We think that consciousness is just our brain, going through the motions. He says, evidence from various directions suggests non-local interactions. Now that's the real key. Non-local interactions, things that occur not right where we are, but where we can't identify where they're coming from. Non-local. Evidence from various directions suggests this. It's what Einstein used to call spooky action at a distance. It's a connection to the most basic level of reality. So what this suggests is that we interact at levels that we're not even aware of. What we do, how we express ourselves in the world, has far-reaching implications. What we do right now in this moment not only affects people in this room or the person sitting next to you, but what we're thinking and what we're feeling, what we're emoting, has far-reaching implications. So our consciousness now is affecting not just what we can see or know or are aware of, but perhaps people and situations across the globe. And this is really significant. This is a very important concept. It's not new to the people who have been studying the science of mind for as long as most of you have, because we know that our consciousness is a part of the whole, a part of the oneness, and we know all of that is God. And we know that each of us is an individualization of that God consciousness. And so that is the love of God. Our consciousness is the love of God. So even though we're in individualization of God, we don't always realize that we have this relationship with the divine. We have a relationship with that which lives through us, or which wants to express through us. So for just to give you an example of that in terms of putting that into terms that's real and that you can see and visualize in your mind, think of water going through a hose. You don't always think of the idea or that water has a relationship to the hose, but it does. It has a tremendous relationship with the hose. And if you put a crimp in the hose, what happens? The water stops. Or if there's that yucky plastic material inside the hose and you drink the water after it comes out, you can taste that, so it picks it up on the way out. And so all of these things are what the water has a relationship with as it moves through the hose. And that's how this presence, this energy moves through us. It picks it up. It picks up all the filters that we've created in our own thinking, in our own processing, in our own ideas, our own beliefs. And that belief system becomes the hose. And so as that energy, that pure energy, that life energy moves through us, it picks up all of that stuff and delivers it. It sprays it all over the world, all over wherever we are and beyond. So Dr. Holmes says, all seek a relationship with God. Life reveals itself to whoever is receptive to it. Life reveals itself to whoever is receptive to it. So the question then becomes, what or how can I become more receptive? How can I become more receptive to this intelligence, to this energy, to this power? How can we become a more clean hose that the water can flow through? How can we allow that energy to flow through us in a way that everything or everyone is benefited by the way that we let it come through us? We have a difficult time with our human form, identifying what our relationship with the divine is supposed to be, don't we? It's the greatest leap that we have to make is to bring what we believe is greater than we are into our personal experience. Now that's a really difficult thing. We think about this amazing power, this amazing presence, and we think to ourselves, how am I going to bring this power into, or how do I know that it is a part of who I am? How can I make that connection? Because there are lots of questions that come up. Questions like, am I good enough for God? You ever thought about that? It's like, oh my God, how can I be the presence of God? How can I be that which God wants to express through? Or will I do the right thing? And that leads to the question, will I satisfy God? And, will what I do, is that going to benefit the godness in the world? And these questions arise from a sense of separation, a sense of believing that we're different or we're separate from that amazing, loving energy and presence and power. But what we have to believe and what we have to realize is that we cannot separate what appears to be outside of us from what we already are. And that the bottom line to all of that is we already are the magnificence of God. We already are the presence of God. We already are the love that God is. It's already in us. It's already running through us. But it's difficult for us to know that and for us to realize that. So I want to tell you a little story about a woman who goes into an empty sanctuary to pray. And she finds a pew and sits down. And she sits there for the longest time in this deep meditative state, just enjoying, just being, just connecting with the stillness, connecting with the presence. And she just feels absolutely wonderful and connected. And an individual comes into the church and touches her from behind, touches her on the shoulder. And she turns around at first with this bright, expectant face, with this bright smile on it. She looks at this individual, and all of a sudden that turns to a frown. And the gentleman says, "What's wrong?" And she turned to him and she says, "Well, I was expecting that was God touching me." So he says, "Well, whose hands do you think God would use?" Whose hands do you think God would use? God uses our hands, God uses our voice, God uses our thoughts, God uses our intentions, God uses us in every possible way to express what it is. What is God? It's the possibility. It's the potential. It's that amazing wonder and awe. It's all about that meditation we did earlier. It's thinking about that beautiful cycle of life, the incredible rain that falls, that feeds our flowers. It's all of that. For centuries, humankind tried to create the image of God that looked like a person. In so many pieces of literature, we see all over the place the idea that God is a person. And it's a very self-centered idea. It's the idea that human people try to create this whatever image they think of in the form of what they think it should look like according to them. We even create aliens that way. You know, I mean, when you talk to people and you say, well, what do the little green men look like? Well, you know, who's to say they've got 2 hands and 2 feet and 2 eyes? Well, sometimes they give them 1 eye, you know, or some weird thing. But it's always this anthropomorphic idea of what we think something else should look like according to us. Well, have we ever thought that perhaps there is something else existing among us right now that we have no idea how it would look? Maybe we are the tiny, tiny, tiny little cells on a piece of, on the head of a pin perhaps, that some enormous thing is watching, and we are that stuff. We are like little bacteria, and that's who we are, you know. But our minds go to that idea that it needs to be a person, it needs to be, you know, it needs to look like us. And so we've created God in that way. And that's part of what makes us feel separate from. And this is the really profound thing, and it is what makes us want to create ourselves or do things that please this God. Because don't we want to please other people when there's someone else in our lives? We want to make them feel good. We want to make them happy. All of these things are things that we do because the other is a person. And so that's the way we think of this idea of God. When we recognize and know that there's only one, there's no separation, there's no one or nothing to please, the only responsibility we do have is to make sure that the vehicle, this hose through which this energy flows, this beautiful expression of love flows, is clean. It's like a hollow tube. It's like something that is not getting things hung up on, our old beliefs, our old conditioning, our old ideas, that's getting somehow filtered before it shows up in the world. So what can we do to clean it out? What can we do to allow that energy to come through a clean, clear vessel? That's our charge. So everyone is looking for this relationship with God. And at the bottom of that whole idea, we need to establish a loving relationship with everything in the world. And it's all good. It's all wonderful. And every time we do that, we glorify the presence of God. We glorify the idea that God is.
Are your connections connected?
Yes.
Because you're going out here.
Better.
Thank you all.
Sorry.
That's all right. When we live out of a consciousness of loving kindness, we're bringing the qualities of the divine into the world. when we are truly living that vessel in a clear way, in a way that allows us to be clear, in a way that allows us to express that, we are truly bringing the qualities of the divine into the world. We're having a relationship with the world. Something really interesting happened this week, and I know that, you know, there are lots of people who are dealing with the bailouts and the stimulus packages and the money that's here or not here or this, that, and whatever, and will it work, and no it won't, yes it will, and blah, 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 and it goes on and on and on. And, you know, there are probably 1,000 sides to this whole issue. So when we look at all that, someone asked Donald Trump what he thought. What did Donald Trump think about this whole thing? Will it work? So, you know, he's a Republican. I'm not sure he would totally always support a Democrat, but he's so honest. He's in integrity most of the time. And he had some really wonderful things to say. And he said, well, he said, I think it can work. He said, but we're missing one thing. We're missing something really, really important. And here I'm sitting there waiting for some big financial answer to come. And he says, what we're missing is spirit. We're missing spirit. And I thought, yes, we're missing spirit. We need to get behind whatever it is, because nothing will work unless we're excited about it, unless we're into it, unless we're really, really for it somehow. And he said, there's just too much negativity going on. He said, bring in the spirit. So I'm for Trump. I'm for spirit. And, you know, it's just a great idea. So every time we experience that sense of bringing something positive, something wonderful into the world, we feel good. We feel a sense of awe and wonder. And when you have that feeling, that is the love of God. That is the loving presence of God shining, expressing through us. So does this make us God? Of course not. But it makes us all an expression of God, an individualization of God at our level of being and acceptance, at our level of how we can totally allow that experience, that energy to come through us. So Dr. Holmes says we must unify in our own mentalities with pure spirit. To each of us, individuality, or God or spirit, is the supreme personality of the universe. The supreme personality of that which we ourselves are. We are that supreme personality. It is only as the relationship of the individual and the deity becomes enlarged that one has this consciousness of power. So here's another hint besides cleaning out this vessel, becoming clear and getting rid of those old beliefs, that old conditioning, letting this wonderful spirit flow through. In addition to that, we need to enlarge our relationship with this power, enlarge what that means to us. Step out into the world, create a larger consciousness of what we believe God to be in our worlds. And so enlarge what we want to have for ourselves. Enlarge what we can give to other people. It was fascinating conversations during the course of the week. Talked to someone who is unfortunately involved in the eviction process of having to tell people that they have to leave their houses. What a horrible job to have. Oh my goodness. I mean, what a horrible thing to have to do to tell people that they have to leave their houses. And yet, this individual responded by saying, and yes, and we're helping them to find another place. And not only that, we're providing them with as many groceries as we can so that they can make it during this interim time. You know, that's enlarging the consciousness. It's not saying, well, I evicted them, I did my job, I'm done. It's saying I'm enlarging what I can do in the world. I'm giving what I can. I'm expressing a bigger idea. I'm enlarging the idea of what I'm faced with. So enlarge the idea of what we're faced with. What are we dealing with? Put spirit in it. Clear out the way that we're expressing our lives and find a way to make it a good thing. to find the positive way of looking at it. Had another conversation this morning about someone who has had some very hard challenges in their lives and said to me, I'm finding the gift in it. That's enlarging our concept of this deity. That's enlarging our relationship with God. Finding the gift in it. Finding the way in which we can be helped by it, by how we can help other people by it. We are in relationship with this creative energy of life. And we have a responsibility to nurture and maintain that relationship in the highest and most sacred way possible. We are sacred beings. We haven't just landed here by chance. We have this amazing gift to think, to choose, to affect, to create. Oh my God, what an amazing thing that is. It's a sacred gift. Let's use it so wisely. Let's let what we do in the world truly magnify the intention of this presence that we call God, this love of God. So it's not about going anywhere to find it, because we're not going out there to look for it. It's right where we are already. And so Chesterton also said, there are two ways of getting home, and one of them is to stay there. So from that place of where we already are, from that place, not trying to find a better place or the next place or a higher place, but from the place where we already are, let us realize that that is here and wants to be expressed outward through us, the love of God. So we may want to ask ourselves as we walk out from this room today, whose hands will touch me next? And will I recognize that those hands are the hands of God? And whose hands, or how will your hands touch another being? Because your hands are the hands of God. So I close today with a kind of a meditation type of thing that Dr. Holmes wrote that just kind of really brings us into that consciousness of that feeling of knowing that we are the vehicle, we are that beautiful way which we become the love of God. O love divine within me, I am overpowered by thy presence. I am speechless. For words cannot utter the things that thou hast revealed to me. Why dost thou love me so? And why clasp me so close to thy eternal heart? O blessed presence, I know, for thou hast claimed me as thine own. I shall never more walk apart from thee. The love of God is within me.